When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. I remember standing in the doorway, holding her gaze, while a strange heaviness filled the room. I wanted to say something. Anything. But the words stuck in my throat. I thought, maybe this was just another bad day, one of those moments we all have in family life. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I had raised him. From the first time I held his tiny hands, felt his soft breath against my chest, I promised to protect him, guide him, and love him unconditionally. And now, it felt as though all that love, all those years, were slipping through my fingers. "You don't understand," she said softly, but there was a firmness in her voice that I couldn't shake. I nodded. I nodded even though I understood perfectly. I understood that my son, my beautiful, stubborn, kind-hearted boy, was no longer entirely mine. He had chosen her. And in that choice, I was left behind. It was a quiet moment, almost silent, except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. My heart ached, a slow, hollow ache that filled the empty spaces in my chest. I thought about all the mornings I had woken before dawn to make breakfast for him. The nights I stayed awake listening to his breathing, the little victories I celebrated with him. All of it now seemed like memories someone else could step into, someone else could claim. I didn't cry that day. I didn't yell. I simply took a deep breath, turned around, and walked away. Behind me, the sound of the door closing echoed in the empty hallway. And as I left, I realized something. Perhaps the hardest part wasn't leaving the house, or the room, or even her. The hardest part was leaving a piece of my own heart behind. A heart that would never fully come back to me. I grew up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business, whether you like it or not. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was ours. My husband and I built a home filled with laughter, quiet moments, and love that was simple but unwavering. When my son Michael was born, I knew my life had changed forever. He had these curious eyes, always watching, always learning. Even as a baby, he seemed older somehow, wiser in ways that made my heart swell with pride. I spent my days balancing work, home, and motherhood, but every evening, I made sure I was there for him. Dinner on the table, homework checked, stories read, hugs shared. I didn't just raise him, I nurtured him. I shaped him, in ways small and large, hoping to prepare him for a world I sometimes feared. Michael was my constant joy. Even in his teenage years, when he started pushing boundaries, I knew that beneath his rebellion was a heart full of kindness. He was protective of those he loved, stubborn in his beliefs, and endlessly curious. Friends came and went, teachers praised him, and neighbors admired him. And through it all, I watched, always silently cheering him on, hoping he'd always carry a piece of home with him. Then she came. Her name was Emily. I remember the first time I met her. She had this calm confidence, a kind smile, and a way of looking at Michael that made him light up. I tried to welcome her, tried to see her as part of the family, but there was a quiet unease in me I couldn't explain. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the feeling that someone could love him in ways only a mother had once been allowed. At first, everything seemed fine. Emily was polite, considerate, and even charming. She asked about my recipes, my opinions, shared her own stories. But gradually, I noticed small shifts. Michael would disappear into conversations with her that lasted hours. He started making decisions without consulting me, sometimes keeping things from me that I would have known had I been included. I tried to brush it off. He's growing up. I told myself. This is normal. But deep down, I felt a cold thread weaving through our family, one I couldn't yet see clearly. I clung to the happy moments, the ones when he smiled at me over breakfast, asked for advice, or just sat beside me quietly. Those moments felt fleeting, fragile, like glass I feared shattering. We continued our routines, but the atmosphere changed. Home, once warm and full of laughter, became quieter. Conversations were brief, eyes avoided each other at times, and I felt my role shifting. Not because Michael was pushing me away, but because Emily's presence had become something I didn't fully understand. Something that felt like it belonged to her, not me. The small tensions started subtly. A comment here, a decision made there. Michael began spending more time with Emily, and less with me. I remember one evening, the dinner table was set as usual. I had prepared his favorite pasta. When he came home, he barely looked at me, talking instead about plans with Emily. "I thought you'd like to come with us," he said casually, "but Emily said it might be boring." I smiled, but inside my chest tightened. I had been the one to take him to museums, parks, late-night drives. Now someone else decided what was fun, what mattered, and I felt invisible. Small disagreements began to surface. Emily had opinions about the way I raised him, the food I cooked, even the way our home was organized. I tried to be polite, nodding, adjusting, finding compromise where I could. But each comment felt like a tiny erosion of my place in his life. One afternoon, I found myself alone in the living room, staring at old photographs of Michael as a child. He had laughed so freely in those pictures, the kind of laughter that made your chest ache with love. I traced his tiny hands in the photos and remembered late nights rocking him, whispering promises that I would always be there. And yet now it felt like those promises belonged to a memory only I could hold. Conversations with Michael became strained. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the love he had for me, but also the loyalty he felt toward Emily. I tried to talk to him. "I just want to spend time with you," I said gently. "I know, Mom," he replied almost too quickly, "but I need to make my own choices." I understood him, truly I did. But understanding didn't make the ache any less. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, watching the life I knew slip away, powerless to hold on to it. The house grew quieter. Meals were eaten in silence, except for occasional polite conversation. Emily began to take over decisions about the home. What furniture to buy, what meals to prepare, even where Michael should spend his free time. I felt like a guest in my own house. I remember one rainy evening, Michael came home drenched from the storm. I had made hot soup for him, my hands trembling as I set the bowl in front of him. He looked at me, smiled, but then his attention shifted immediately to Emily, who had arrived unannounced. "Thanks, Mom," he said softly, but there was a distance in his voice, a subtle shift I could feel but couldn't quite name. Emily spoke then, a quiet, assertive voice. "I thought we could go to the movies tonight. He'll love it." I nodded, hiding the sting, the hurt that tightened my throat. I ate my own dinner alone, listening to the rain tapping against the windows, feeling as though I had already lost something I didn't yet know how to grieve. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Michael had invited Emily over for lunch, and I had tried to join in, to bridge the growing distance. But she had been different that day, distant, almost dismissive. She spoke with a tone that made it clear this was her space, her rules, her Michael. I watched them, the two of them, laughing over a joke I didn't understand, sharing a closeness I had once thought belonged to me alone. And then came the words I still hear in my dreams. "Mom, I think it's best if you give us some space." I froze. My hands gripped the edge of the table. "Space?" I asked softly, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes," Emily said, calm but firm. "You've done so much for him, but he needs us now. You should leave." The room spun. My heart pounded, my mind raced. I felt like I had been pushed into a world where I didn't belong, where every memory, every effort, every ounce of love I had poured into raising him meant nothing to this new chapter. I wanted to cry. I wanted to shout. But I didn't. I only nodded, turned, and walked out of the house. The rain outside mirrored my feelings, cold, relentless, impossible to stop. I remember standing on the porch, the door closing behind me, feeling the finality in the sound. In the days that followed, I felt invisible. Michael called less often. Emily answered for him. The warmth in their voices, the joy in their conversations, it was theirs now. My presence was no longer needed, wanted, or invited. I spent hours in my room, staring at photographs, letters, small mementos of our life together. I whispered apologies to myself, to Michael, to a universe that seemed indifferent. I mourned not just for him, but for the bond one thought would never be broken. And yet, amidst the grief, there was a quiet realization. I had loved him fiercely, without condition. And even if the world had shifted, that love remained. It couldn't be taken, diminished, or erased. I could not force him to stay, but I could honor the years we had shared, the lessons we had learned together, and the person he had become. Time passed. Slowly, weeks turned into months, and the sharp edge of loss softened. I learned to see Michael not as a possession, but as a man who had grown, who was making choices, and who still carried pieces of me in his heart. Emily and I never became friends, and perhaps we never could. But I stopped resisting. I stopped trying to assert a place that had shifted naturally. Instead, I focused on my own life, my own home, and the quiet joys that remained. I found solace in small moments. A letter from Michael that arrived unexpectedly, a memory of a shared joke, a photograph that captured a fleeting smile. I learned that love does not always mean presence. Sometimes, love means letting go, stepping back, and allowing those you cherish to live their lives fully, even if it hurts. I also learned to forgive, not for Emily, but for myself, for Michael, and for the world that had changed in ways I could not control. Forgiveness does not erase pain, but it softens it. It makes room for peace, for understanding, and for a quiet hope that life continues, even when the heart feels broken. I began to reach out again, carefully, with letters, small messages, phone calls. Not to reclaim what was lost, but to maintain the bond that still existed. Michael responded cautiously at first, then more warmly. It was not the same as before, but it was something real, something that could grow in time. And I discovered something unexpected. In the absence of my constant presence, I found myself again. I revisited hobbies, friendships, and quiet moments of reflection. I laughed more freely, cried when needed, and allowed myself to simply exist, without the constant ache of trying to belong. Through this, I realized that love is not possession. Love is patience, understanding, and respect. It is quiet support, even from a distance. And it is the ability to let those you cherish live fully, even if that life no longer includes you in the way you imagined. Now when I think of Michael, I see a man shaped by love, mine, Emily's, his own. I remember holding his small hands and whispering promises, and I see the echoes of those moments in the person he has become. Our bond is no longer as it once was, but it remains quiet, enduring, and real. I have learned to carry my love for him without needing it to be returned in the same way. I have learned to cherish the memories, the lessons, and the moments of connection, no matter how brief. And I have learned that letting go is not failure. It is strength. If there is a lesson in all of this, it is that life is unpredictable. People change, relationships shift, and hearts can be broken. But love, true love, endures even in absence. It teaches patience, humility, and a quiet resilience that grows over time. I still smile when I think of Michael. I still remember his laughter, his curiosity, his warmth. And I hold hope that, in some small way, he feels my love, even when distance keeps us apart. Sometimes, life will take pieces of you and ask you to step back. It will test your heart, your patience, and your ability to accept. And sometimes all you can do is breathe, smile softly, and say, "I love you," even from afar. Because that is enough. And in the end, that love, patient, enduring, unconditional, is a gift no one can take away. It is a quiet light that remains, guiding both of you forward, even if your paths have diverged.